Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Shantae, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze podcast, where we believe that healing and wholeness are not destinations.
That's right. We believe they're a journey, and here on the Love Haze, we talk about how we navigate through them.
Today, we're going to be talking about what happens when you choose to be guarded rather than vulnerable.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on our Black love journey. Let's get into it.
There you go.
There you go.
So today's conversation is a reflection on something we heard together in Put a Ring on It, which is one of our Black love shows that we absolutely love. Watch.
One of many.
Yeah, religiously. If you want a list of our Black love shows, holler at us. We'll give them to you. But Put a Ring on It just finished. And Dr. Nicole LaBeach, who happens to be a Spelman sis, shout out to Spelman, is the therapist on the show. And if you've never seen the show, it is, three couples get together, agree to date other people for X period of time. And at the end of that experience, they decide essentially if they want to put a ring on it, get married, or go their separate ways.
Yes.
Just wrapped up their second season. And in one of the sessions they had, so they go on these dates, they come back together, they reflect. Dr. Nicole also does individual sessions, really just kind of helps people call out the things that are holding them back and helps them usher either, forward in their relationships or forward not together. In one of the sessions, she says, sometimes when you stay ready, you stay defensive. And she said, when you're guarded, yes, you keep the bad out, but you also keep the good from coming in. And I was like, ooh, that was a really powerful way of saying that. That thought just really resonated with us. So we thought we'd spend some time today just reflecting on that, unpacking that a little bit. Again, not to teach anything, but just reflections based on how we've seen it show up in our own lives, and maybe it'll resonate with someone else. So What does that thought idea mean to you?
So of course, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But just the first part of if you stay ready, sometimes you stay defensive.
Yeah.
I think that we have kind of like taken that on in our culture and in this generation. A lot of us like to say, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
Yeah.
All right. But, in this context, I think it really means that if I stay ready for whatever thing that hurt me in the past, then, I don't have to prepare for it to circle back around again. I've automatically got my guard up.
Yeah.
I'm already in defense mode.
Yeah.
I'm already ready to fight off or fend off, this thing that may be getting ready to happen to me. And I think that as we go through things in life, right, our goal a lot of times is to, especially when things have hurt us, our goal a lot of times is not to experience that level of hurt again. And so we try to learn from the thing that we've been through, which I think is a good thing. But we also try to be prepared to never experience that level of pain again. I can remember being a kid and play fighting, and one of the worst things when you play fighting with a brother or sister, somebody hits you when your guard is down and you don't have a chance to brace for it. And I can remember play fighting with my cousins. We were outside playing kickball and somebody snuck me. And I almost forgot that was my cousin, right? Because I didn't have a chance to brace myself. And we were playing, but my eyes got bloodshot and I was ready to fight.
A W on his chest is daddy's first initial is W, and he keeps it on his chest about right here.
So, I think what we desire to do is to be able to brace for whatever is coming. So we try to get ready and be prepared and know the answer and know what's going to happen. So there's a level of us that wants to, or a portion of us that wants to kind of be ready for whatever may come. I just want a chance to brace for whatever may be coming. And that's us putting up our defenses. So then we're keeping those things away from us, but we don't have a chance to let the good things come in too. So we're keeping everything out. Right. And a lot of times we are operating with avoidance instead of being open to, what may be for us. And it's because we don't want to experience hurt again. And we may not know how to navigate those spaces. So when we stay ready and stay in a defensive posture, we're always ready to fight. Right. So when I put on my shoulder pads or I got my dukes up, I'm ready for a fight. But you're also fighting off the things that may be good for you. So when I got my hands closed and I'm ready for a fight, then that means my hands aren't open to receive what may be coming from me. And so we can't have both of those things. Yeah. Right. So sometimes on the staying ready, we do stay defensive. We do have our hands closed and ready for fight, ready for bad things to happen. But what about the good things that the universe may be sending our way that we're not opening ourselves up to? So what are your thoughts?
I agree with what you said, basically, in terms of, how our generation is all about stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I guess for me, it is not always about having a posture of being ready to fight, because that doesn't resonate with who I am as a person. But I do resonate. I understand fully what it means to stay guarded. In that, for me, it would often show up and it might still sometimes. I think I've just gotten better with being intentional about vulnerability, but just not only allowing certain people to see certain parts of me and everyone else getting this unfazed, chiller version of me, I guess, or parts of me. I can give you an example. So in grad school, and we had these choreography courses throughout, obviously a choreography program, and we would have these prompts that we have to choreograph pieces to about every single week. One of the prompts we were choreographing, and I chose to reveal a part of myself that I had not. And I made a conscious choice to do that because I wanted to process through that experience a little bit more. And in the piece, as I was performing it, because we could have either had dancers every week that we had to choreograph, or we could just choreograph the piece on ourselves. And I remember presenting it however many of us, maybe 10 of us in this auditorium, and I get on stage and music plays and I start to move through the piece and a tear falls from my face. And then, so after you perform the piece, you sit and, the professor will give you thoughts. Your peers can weigh in on it. And one of my peers was like, that's the first time I've ever really seen you be vulnerable before. And it really struck a chord with me because it just didn't dawn on me that maybe I was keeping parts of myself from others. So essentially I'm keeping people from getting to know me on a richer, deeper level. So I guess it kind of resonated with me, this idea is that I'm not ready to fight all the time, but I'm just not allowing maybe the softer, more, especially when I'm crying. I'm not a public crier. I prefer to cry in private. So the fact that somebody saw a tear come down my face doesn't mean that I cried. My mom even said it recently. She's like, you never cried as a kid. And I'm thinking, I was crying all the time, it felt like, but I didn't realize I was just doing it just with me in the shower or, so I guess those are some of the things that it comes up for me. It's not necessarily that I'm always ready to fight or, it's just that the world is not seeing, I guess, all the parts that it could see, which it doesn't have to be a bad thing all the time. But I think in some cases it's just like, why hide those parts?
I think that we hide those parts because, for the most part, we want safe spaces. Yeah. Right. And so I think what the world has taught us and our experiences have taught us is that, in order for you to be vulnerable in spaces anywhere, you want it to be safe for you to be vulnerable. And so, my answer, I think, to the thought behind what Dr. Nicole was saying in that moment is really about whatever your defense mechanism may be. Yeah. Whether yours is a fight, I think I'm just probably a little bit more of an aggressor, and I think of fighting as defense. I think that's a whole separate conversation about how men are socialized to, believe that the response is automatically aggression. So those are some layers we have to pull back another episode. But still, it really is about whatever your defense is, right? And whatever is safety for you, or wherever you withdraw to when things are not safe. And I think some of it is around like this idea of fight or flight, all those things, but more than anything, we are trying to get to safety where I can be the real me and not be hurt when the real me comes out, So I don't, at the end of the day, I don't want to be out here vulnerable at risk of being hurt or jabbed or any of those things because the world sees my guard down.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm thinking right now is like, are those, and this is a question I don't have an answer to, is it possible for you to show your full self to the world and that not come with some sort of harm, hurt, or potential for hurt? Because our true selves, we are who we are because we've gone through some amount of pain already. And so I'm just wondering, can those coexist? Can you be fully present in who you are without there being some sort of pain? Or
short answer, no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what vulnerability is.
Yeah.
And I think that if we live a life where that doesn't exist, then we live a life that is void of like sheer joy. But on the flip side, there's extreme disappointment, right? And so when you are vulnerable, you're putting yourself out there and saying that this is who I am, right? And I'm open to being seen in either one of those things happening.
Yeah, you're risking the things that you fear most happening, So for me, as I think about like, why don't I let people see me cry or whatever, or put myself out there? I think part of it is, for me, I was putting myself out there in art making in general. So that was already a lot of like fear of judgment is like a big thing. So I was already doing it in so many other ways that I think maybe I was just keeping this part for myself. So judgment for me, and also not wanting, I don't want to say it was pity, but I don't want people to feel like they have to take it on and solve the thing. Sometimes I just need to be able to like cry without it being like a show and, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Like sometimes like, just let me get it out and then I'll be fine. So that's probably the other thing. So I'm saying all of that, like when you're vulnerable, you risk all of the things that you're afraid of happening and you have to like be comfortable in that discomfort,
And I really think that's what we're talking about, right? Most of us don't want to take the risk.
Yeah.
Right? We want the reward without having to take too much of a risk.
Yeah.
In our friendships and our relationships, when we have to make career decisions, when we have to do any of these things, and I think it for the context of what Dr. Nicole was talking about, they're talking about their relationships, right? And the whole premise behind the show of, as you go through the episodes, what you are seeing is that the different layers of what they're talking about really comes down to, do I want to take this risk with this person? And what if it doesn't work out? Or what if this person sees this side of me and they don't like it and they don't want to be here anymore? What if we just keep dating forever and never, and we can have the option to just kind of like not be married and all of those things, right? And I read something last week. I cannot remember where I read it. And I think it kind of plays into like the way we are reserved in that way and the way that we are scared to take risk. And the person said, divorces are expensive, but conversations are cheap.
Oh, that's a word.
So there's so many times when we don't want to have the conversation.
Everybody's grown till it's time to have a conversation.
Right. We don't want to have a conversation because what if you see me, right? What if you see me and you don't like what you see? Like, we've been getting along in this space and dating and doing all of these things, but I've been able to hide like this vulnerable part of me from you. Right. And you like me so much and I like you so much, but what if you see my shit?
Yeah.
And you don't like it?
Yeah.
Right. How long can I hide this from you? Right. And that's the very risky part. But if we're being honest, that's really what love and relationship and partnership is really supposed to be about. Like, having a safe space where I can share those parts of me, you know, with a person, where we can have those conversations.
Yeah.
We can talk about what it looks like, and I can feel supported and you can feel supported to not only share those things, but the really scary part is after I share those things, then we have to work on them.
Yeah.
Right. We have to talk about solutions.
Yeah.
And if I'm staying defensive, I don't really have to do that.
Yeah. It's really kind of that what we were talking about with the Thompsons recently when they were on, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship? And like what that looks like. And it requires some vulnerability to say, hey, either one, you hurt my feelings, to say like you hurt my feelings or this hurt my feelings when this thing happened, requires some vulnerability. Or to even on the reverse flip side of that, say, I apologize if, like, both of those put us in a space where you can't be guarded, I think, to have those conversations and to be real. Can you recall, I know you already mentioned some about a kid, but can you recall any adult life experiences where either you chose to be guarded, and if so, why? Or maybe you chose to be vulnerable and it paid off for you?
I don't know. Why don't you answer this first?
Me? Well, the choreography question or experience is definitely a moment where I chose to be vulnerable and it paid off. But after reading Brene Brown's like Daring Greatly, the whole idea about just being in the arena and the amount of courage it takes to be vulnerable, I have intentionally been more vulnerable in spaces or speaking up, or if I feel away, just kind of saying the thing. I did have an experience with someone, and I was sharing with them how I felt, and this was a friend, and was very honest with how I felt and put it down in written form because that was a way that that person received information well, and it seemed to have value in the past, and it was a way for me to say everything I needed to say without and just kind of like process what I wanted to say and like say it all. And also make sure that my tone was okay and that it wasn't angry. And so I was able to be vulnerable and say these things like hurt you. And we had spoken about a number of them in person already. So putting them down on paper wasn't the first time that they had heard it, but putting it down and saying, hey, these things hurt my feelings. And I don't think you intended them, but you know, this is actually what it was. And I would really like instead if we did this other thing. It didn't, I don't know if it paid off for me really well. Like I didn't get a response. I didn't get any engagement from it, which really hurt my feelings even more. But I am proud that I got it out instead of, because if I had not and then just chosen to just hold on to that, I would have resented that person and I could have blown up at some other time. Right. And so it didn't really quite turn out the way that I had hoped, but at least I was able to say it. And I feel like I have a good conscience for how I delivered it. So I guess that's an example of like choosing to be vulnerable and it might not turn out, you know, the way that you hoped. But I mean, I believe all things work together for your good. So
absolutely.
It is what it is at this point, but I'm glad I chose honesty and vulnerability in that situation versus being guarded and just holding on to something that I really wanted to say.
For me, a whole bunch of times, but I think the time was the most impactful for me was like deciding so many times, like not to have conversations with my dad that I really wanted to have with him in the name of just like maintaining the relationship.
Yeah.
And as time went on, I would just continue to resent him not doing better and being better.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a time when I just decided, like, I'm going to say what I need to say.
Yeah.
Balls to the wall. And, you know, he raised a man. I'm about to be a man talking to a man.
Mm-hmm.
And he shut it down. He basically told me, like, pay for them degrees that you have. I don't want to have this conversation. And I remember him saying to me, I'm just as old over you now as I was the day that you were born. So basically, like, pulling, you know, rank and saying that, you know, because of my age, you don't get to have these conversations with me. And me being proud of myself for just saying, no, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a relationship. And I need for you to honor these things because this is the way that I need to be loved. And in both of our stubbornness, you mentioned this W that's on my chest, right? But I got it honestly from my dad. So my dad was very, very stubborn. And so am I. He raised a stubborn man as well.
And you know how older generation don't want to talk about their stuff, honey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if you're trying to get any of that out of him.
And so I decided that we would just have a battle of the bullheaded Negroes. And so we went for about 3 months without speaking. And so I can't say that it paid off because now that my father is not here, I think about that time where I would call my parents home and ask to speak to my mom, you know, and not talk to him because he chose this other thing rather than having the conversation. So I don't know if it paid off. I think in the end it paid off because I can remember being in the hospital room with my dad and like when he was like towards the end and having conversations with him where he wasn't having conversation with my mom. He wasn't having conversation with my sisters. And they were saying, he won't talk to anybody except you. And so I have to balance those things about whether or not they paid off. So some of those conversations, and I have one still on my phone where, you know, he was just talking about like
a voicemail.
The voicemail that no. Well, one is a voicemail, but one is like interaction that I filmed in the hospital between he and I, where he was like very lucid, very much like I was walking because of, you know, this other thing when people thought that, you know, he had just kind of withdrawn from reality. But he was like very lucid in telling me like he was walking because of, and he had this fear of, and these other things that he had not shared with my mom or my sisters. And they're like, I don't understand why he's able to like talk in complete sentences with you and that type of thing. And the story that I'm telling myself is that I laid the groundwork for him to be able to have some of those conversations with me. Yeah. And right, it prepared, you know, it made the ground fertile for him to be able to talk about things that, you know, he had not talked with anyone about. And I think that in those moments, I think he viewed me as a man, you know, and as his son and someone that he could, you know, have. It was a safe space. Exactly. For him.
He trusted that space. And that's beautiful. As you're saying all of this, what I'm reflecting on or sensing is like, well, of course, vulnerability, being vulnerable is for us, but if it doesn't go the way that we thought, how do we still reap the benefit of it? Like, what's the point, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And maybe it just establishes, it's like a choice towards being the person you want to actually be. Maybe, I think for me, was the case. Like, even though it didn't go that way, I now know that I'm a person that expects this from friendships and sets boundaries and says what's on my mind and is not in attempts to discard you, but to say, hey, this doesn't work for me and I would like for it to be this way instead. And I think that's what I'm hearing from your situation. He didn't respond the way that you hoped he would initially, but at least you set a boundary for like, this is what I need. And to your point, maybe that was enough in terms of how he his perspective of you or his respect for you, you know, in some way.
So for me, it is releasing myself from right. And you mentioned earlier, right? Like, do I want to be right or do I want to be in a relationship?
Yeah.
And I think releasing myself from this need to be right is understanding that no matter what, if I have the conversation, it doesn't have to be that I'm right or wrong. If I have the conversation, we're having the conversation because it's a safe space for us to have the conversation. Yeah. And I can tell you why I think that my perspective is the correct one. And you can tell me why your why your perspective you feel is the right one. We are not trying to get to who's right. Yeah. I release myself from right. What I'm saying to you by having the conversation is saying that no matter what, I want to be in relationship. Right. So it doesn't have to be that we're having this conversation so you can finally see that I'm right. Yeah. Right. It's so that we can find a middle ground so that we can remain in relationship. Yeah. How can we operate in this space together? So did it work out? Yeah. Then to me, we have to circle back around to being able to find what the lesson was. Right. So even when we buried my dad and at his funeral, it gave me an opportunity when I had to write down my thoughts about our relationship to be able to zoom out and say that I was doing all this fighting with my dad because he was my hero. Yeah. Like, you know, and I wanted him to, just like we want our favorite team to win, I wanted him to win. And in my eyes, the way that he could win in our relationship was to be able to hear me. Yeah. Right. And hear my heart and know that I don't want anything bad for you. I want us to be able to talk. And if I don't feel safe here, then I'm not going to talk to you. So that was what I was trying to get him to hear. He couldn't hear that in that moment. But ultimately, I think somewhere down the line, there was a space there for him to be able to say some things that he needed to say to me. And when I took me out of the situation, right, when I took my need to be right out of the situation, it was preparing us for those moments where we could have a space for him to be able to talk and me to let go of right and be able to receive what that space needed to be for him. Right. And so it gives me a whole different perspective on dealing with my relationships moving forward. So it gives me an opportunity to be able to think sometimes like, let me take me out of this for a second. Like, what if this situation, this thing is preparing this relationship for where it needs to be in the future or for when this person really needs me? Do I need to be able to teach them something? Because that's who my dad was. Like, when you try to tell him something about him, he's going to try to teach you a lesson out of all of it. But ultimately, I think that, you know, my higher power, I think that God was trying to prepare a space for those moments and for him to have that space that he needed in order to be able to transition. And being able to hold my father's hand when he was actively dying and be able to say, hey, it's okay to go. You know, and for me to believe that he heard that message when my dad ain't listened to nobody, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I believe that he heard me. Because in those moments when I just wanted to be right, it was establishing, you know, safe space for a relationship. Because oftentimes they say that when people are getting ready to transition and they're still fighting, they want those conversations from their family. They're not transitioning because they don't feel like they can leave. And I feel like I was able to have those conversations with my dad and be like, okay, it's okay to go. Yeah. Like, I got it.
And imagine if you had stayed guarded in any of those situations before, you could have essentially robbed yourself of those moments later in his life, which just are beautiful and are, you know, really just what life is about, you know, being there for each other and in whatever way, I guess that looks like. So that's really beautiful. So what's the haze? And I know we've already talked about a number of difficulties with being vulnerable and how, you know, it's just, you think you're saving yourself from some sort of hurt or pain when you're being guarded, but you're really robbing yourself of, you know, what could be. But anything else that comes to mind is the haze and choosing vulnerability over, you know, being guarded?
So many R's. I don't want to use all these R's, but for me, it's the releasing yourself from being right, because that's something I have to actively do all the time. But instead of that, I know that I'm able to replace that with, like, I don't want to live a life of regret.
Yeah.
And so often when we don't take the chance, when we're on guard, when we are staying ready, we have all of these regrets, because what if I had of, right? What would the universe have conspired in those moments to give me exactly what I wanted to, if I was able to let go of my reservations?
Yeah.
To release myself from the desire to be right, to release myself from being on guard all the time, to unbar my hands, right, and be able to receive, what is rightfully mine, to be able to walk into the promise, all of those things. We, our generation, I believe that damn near faithless. We believe that a lot of us believe that we just go on information. Whatever I can read in a book, that's the right answer. We super smart, but we don't have a whole bunch of faith.
I don't know. I think a lot of folks are these days more spiritual, more positive, more like not religious. I don't know. I don't know if people are faithless. I would probably push back on that notion based on what I see from people these days, but I agree that it is different than previous generations, what their faith walk looked like. I think ours just is different. We live in different times, different circumstances.
I think we're more research based, right? And I think that faith a lot of times does not line up with research, especially as it relates to my spiritual relationship. The research may say this thing, but what I'm believing for is something that is supernatural, and it's different. And yes, I want to be smart about it. Yes, I want to make good decisions. I want to make good moves. But ultimately, my faith walk is about understanding that it will be supernatural.
And so what are you saying about that note in terms of vulnerability and regret?
I'm saying that it requires you to be vulnerable, having faith, and knowing that even as it relates to our relationship, I believe that like God sent me exactly what I needed and what I had been praying for, right? But during the times when we were ghosting each other, those were times when I was thinking through and not wanting to revisit some old hurt. And thinking about, like, what if I put myself out here and this girl out here playing, right? Those times when I wasn't calling you back, or when I was, getting mad at you for ghosting me. Those were times for you, though, when you were kind of drawn nearer to your spiritual relationship and depending on those things.
That was not the ghosting. The ghosting was, you always get that mixed up. But I ghosted you early on because I was afraid. So.
And some of that's my stuff, right? So I know when I was ghosting you, it was a part of it was like my own faithlessness, right? Not believing that you were who you said you were. And I was on some stay ready. I ain't finna be out here liking this girl
and stuff.
Child. I ain't finna be out here being, all into this girl, and she playing around. She don't know what she want to do. We need to bebopping around here with the AKAs and shit. I don't have time for that. I'm with the spell, but I'm an AKA. I don't care about that.
I wasn't saying any of that, first of all.
It was the story I was telling myself.
I said none of that. That's not even how I speak or who I am.
But the most important story is the story that we're telling ourselves.
Is it, though?
Yeah, that's the one that we usually make decisions off of. Those are the ones that keep us from being vulnerable. And can nobody beat me up about the decisions that I made? Like, I can beat me up. And those are the things that we take into consideration when we get ready to make decisions. Like, how has this panned out for you in the past, Mr. Lover Man? Right? You've been out here all free willy-nilly and being taken advantage of. So the story that The story that we tell ourselves, right, are often precautionary tales, you know, of those things that we've been through in the past that have hurt us and harmed us, whether it was ourselves that put us into danger, right? Because ultimately that's who we hold accountable.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, don't put yourself back in that situation again to be hurt like that. But it's also, you're not putting yourself back in that situation to be blessed.
Yeah.
The way that you could be blessed.
Yeah, and I'm trying to move us forward to the next thought. Is like, well, how do you navigate through that haze? And the thoughts that are coming to mind are a couple for me. Yes, it is an uncomfortable and scary thing to do, to be more vulnerable. But I guess some of the thoughts I would offer are, one, just make the decision based on who you want to be. So like, and just do it scared, meaning like, do you want to be the type of person that says what's on your heart regardless, you know, and, you know, just kind of puts it out there, or opens up to new things? Or do you want to be the type of person that stays where you are, stays where safe, where it's comfortable, that holds on to resentments, that doesn't say the thing that needs to be said? Like, who do you want to be? And make your choice based on that, and be okay with whatever happens from that choice. I would also say maybe ask yourself a couple questions, like, yes, this thing is scary, and it could go left and not go well. Or what could it look like if it goes incredibly right? And maybe let that idea move you and make a choice off of that. I don't think there's any way around the haze. I don't think there's any way around the scariness of that feeling, the fear of getting hurt or humiliated or not seen or not heard or not valued, or whatever the thing is for you. There's no way around that. I think the only way is through it. And you just have to make the choice and trust that you have everything within you to make it through, that you will be okay, that all things are working together, whatever it is that you believe. Like, trust you. Yeah. And then do the damn thing.
So, and that's the thing for me, right? The thing that I try to live my life by is like, I trust me. Yeah. I trust the journey that I'm on. I trust the wind to be the wind, right? Yeah. So it is not the blowing of the wind, it's the setting of the sail. Right? So the wind gonna do what the wind gonna do. The wind is gonna blow. Like, how am I gonna navigate against the wind that is gonna do what the wind does? Right? Am I gonna stay on the shore? Or am I gonna be out and be about my journey? And find my way? Right? And the thing that I believe that my past has done for me, and those experiences have done for me, it has provided a level of experiential learning that I would not trade for anything.
Experiential learning?
You better look it up. You better Google some stuff. I just decided on using that word. But anyway, experiential learning for me is, I've done these things. Like, I've been down this road before, right? So what I have gathered along the way in those experiences is tools, right? I picked up some things along the way that I can use to help me navigate that space when I go back through it. So when the wind blows and it catches my sail and it blows me this way, right? I know if the wind blows from the east, then I need to make this adjustment to my sail, right? If the wind blows from the west, I need to make this adjustment to my sail to make sure that I'm going in the right direction, right? So I've had some failures, and when I set my sail the wrong way, that helped me understand I don't need to do that again. Right. It does not mean don't move. That's the thing that I have to settle on. That part. It does not mean that I settle for the safety of the shore. Yeah. It means that there is something that I'm supposed to be doing. And if I keep failing in the same way that I failed before, then that's problematic and something else that I need to take a look at. But if I get out here and I explore, then God has given me exactly what I need for the journey. Yep. I just have to know how to set my sail. But not only that, to be able to make the adjustment in the middle of it. Yeah. Right. If I can make the adjustment, then I'll be okay. Yeah. So I might make a misstep or make a mistake, and I may be a little off course, but navigating the journey which is what we're doing, right, is being able to make the adjustment and do something different.
Hey, man, that is a whole word, Mr. Loverman. Just
what you not gonna do is hold that. You're not gonna hold that.
That is
I won't allow
word.
So, we have any resources that you want to share?
Trusting yourself, I think, is just the biggest resource. I don't have any. What about you?
For me, I think this circles back around to all things mental wealth.
Yeah.
And understanding that some of our stuck places are maybe like from our own traumas.
Not maybe.
Well, I think that trauma itself, one of the qualifying factors for trauma is having a place where you're stuck that you can't move forward from.
Yeah.
So therapy is definitely a resource. If you're thinking of pages to follow and stuff like that as starting points, I think like Black Men Heal on Instagram is a good one.
Therapy for Black girls.
Therapy for Black girls.
Dr. Nicole has Ask Dr. Nicole. Spirit from Love Goals. Talk to Spirit.
All of those IGs are good starting points. I think they also have Facebook pages that are, and for some of us, what we need, right, is a starting point. An introduction to. I follow all those folks just because they post affirmations. They post things that are good for me.
Ooh,
they recommend books.
Alexandra L. Alex L. I think is her.
Yes, I love her
tag, and she has that. I think we've talked about it before. After the Rain book, and her page is just full of affirmative affirmations, affirmative experiences, how to move forward. A real gem for sure.
Those follow some of those. We'll also add some of those into our resource list. Speaking of things that will be added to, I've gotten super excited about our playlist, our music for the moment. So I think I'm gonna put it on you today. So what's your music for the moment? What does this situation feel like?
First thing I thought of was Anthony David, Let Me In, which quite honestly, every time I hear, I think about us in the beginning too. You got the ADT on your heart.
Yeah.
Let me in. Let me in. All that. I couldn't hit the runs like he did. But yeah, definitely Anthony David, Let Me In. Can't wait to add that one to the lineup. That's a good one.
We're going to move forward, but I'm going to tell y'all how play I was. Had a playlist for Shawty going or whatever. Was adding to it. Used to send her songs and stuff. And that was one of them. Let Me In. Because she used to be like, I don't want to do that.
That's not real.
I don't know if I'm ready for all that.
Well, that part is. Didn't know if I was ready for it. But on the way to, I was headed to Dallas to work on Hairspray, the musical at Dallas Theater Center. You were driving me to the airport. We going down East-West Connector, and that song comes on. And it was just very, I think, fitting for that moment, but for all moments where you are fighting to stay guarded, but there's something better for you if you would just open up. So whoever that is saying to you, let me in, it could be a relationship, could be an opportunity, could be healing, could be joy, could be anything. Let it in.
Could be everything you ever asked for. And it could be an opportunity for another lesson that is a part of your journey on the way to what you asked for.
Yep, your highest good.
No losses, only lessons.
That's right. There is no loss. There is only spiritual gain.
Amen.
Amen. Well, like we always say, life will always present you with a haze, but you have everything that you need within you to navigate through it.
That's right. And you're not alone.
You're not. So
keep joining us, keep tuning in, and we'll take the journey together.
That's right.
All right, y'all. Peace. Till the next time.
Holla.